And I'll just start that again because I was muted. G'day everyone, welcome to another edition of the Weekend Wrap brought to you by Crowcast. A disappointing gather round for us, and it looks like getting even more disappointing judging by the results this evening, but without any further ado and without too much lamenting of the situation, why don't we just crack straight in, shall we? There we go. Oh dear, good evening, and welcome everyone to the gather round edition of the Weekend Wrap. Macca, how are you?
Well, it seems like forever ago, but bloody disappointed. I mean, doubly disappointed what Port is doing. But no, look, we opened the round for a gather round, which has been an absolute success. It's an outstanding round. It must stay in South Australia, and it does work. It's a very good thing. Having said that, Adelaide didn't really do their part. I thought it was a disappointing result because we started off so well, and we played good footy for 1 and 2/3 quarters, but we just stuffed around for about 5-10 minutes and let them get back into the game before half time. Now, we always were going to be a little bit weary in the last quarter, whether we liked it or not. But so we needed a goodly lead, I thought. And we had it, but we just blew it in that second quarter, and that's where I think we lost the game, mate.
Yeah, junk time in all quarters was no good, and you could see that they were just starting to struggle towards the end of the first half, and I thought, oh, here we go. We're in a bit of strife here. I didn't think we were far enough in front, Mac, and that's how it played out. So, look, before we get into it, thanks to everyone who's joined us on Discord and also on YouTube. Obviously, there's a game going on, and I suppose a lot of people will be watching that. So I thought about rescheduling it. I thought, no, it's only bloody Port. Let's get carried away. So thanks for everyone who's joined us. Speaking of people who haven't joined us, Brownie's still on leave. He flies back tomorrow, so he'll be back with us next week. I've had a couple of conversations with him during the course of his absence, and fair to say he's made the most of it. And the scandal, Macca, the big scandal, is of course that Big Man is at the Port Hawthorn game. I think questions need to be asked.
Well, he'll have to re-swear a vow of loyalty when he comes back next week.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
And he really needs to be on bended knee when he does it too.
Wow.
He has to grovel.
It's a bit hard for us to tell whether he's on bended knee because he won't come on camera, but anyway, never mind. So we will shoot through it tonight. We won't keep people too long. It's already faded into the memory, that game anyway. So,
it certainly has, hasn't it?
Well, it has.
I was just going to say, look, it has, and I had to go back and reanalyse all the players' stats and have a think about what they actually did to really get a real handle back on it again. Because as you say, it's what, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 4 days. 4 days in my life is forever, mate.
Yeah, look, a couple of things before we get going. Don't forget we're brought to you proudly by Once.Sport, our sports analysis software partner. I've got all those glitches sorted out, so we will be back with the engine room analysis during the week, and that should prove quite interesting. I've already started that, and it is quite interesting for what it shows or doesn't show. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube either now or on demand later on and you like what you see, it would be great if you could give us a subscribe and also a like. It really helps us get in on the algorithms. Now, Macca, I don't think there's any point in messing around, so let's get straight into the game summary and just to add salt into the when Cats kicked 119, 18-11, 119 to 15-10, 100. Not often a team kicks 100 points and loses, but there you go. That's the mantra.
Yep.
My overall thoughts, Macca, was that, again, this is starting to pan out the way I feared that it might. We came in with absolutely no logical plan. If you're carrying a couple of blokes, clearly Isaac wasn't 100%, and it didn't look like Matt Crouch was 100% either from that hip flexor.
Agreed.
So we're coming off a 5-day break in the boiling, humid Gold Coast sun, and we've got a couple of midfielders that are a little bit off peak fitness. Wouldn't mind betting Dawson's carrying a little nigger as well in that calf.
I reckon.
Why would you pick a team, Macca? Why would you pick a team and set up a strategy that is basically a shootout?
Well, you wouldn't. Sensibly, you wouldn't, because that's not what we were. I know that Nick's will be thinking that if we can kick him and get a big enough lead, we'll be able to hang on. And I think that's what his philosophy was, because there was no attempt to ever close the game down.
Not once.
They got back into it because we did keep it open, and in fairness, we were scoring well at that stage. But then some real schoolboy errors made some really bad decisions. Just blew the lead, and and as you quite rightly said before, we had to have credits in the bank so that we could last for the whole game out, knowing that what we'd been through the 5 days before. So, but I think it's the usual players that let us down again. O'Brien and Ruck, absolutely horrific, mate. When you've got
I don't want to go there yet. I want to talk about the coach. All right.
Yeah. Okay.
On top of that selection, so you play Isaac Rankin, who's carrying a calf. We've got 1,000 midfielders, and yet we play him predominantly through the middle. Now, I would have thought you maximise his damage by playing him up forward and maybe reducing his midfield minutes if he's not, because whilst he played very well and got 22 touches and all that sort of stuff, his metres gained stat was down, and once again he was a defensive liability. The other thing, Macca, is that we went short in defence. So if you are going to go short in defence, you need to have a lockdown small defender, right? We had no plan for Dangerfield. We had bloody Max Michaelani running around on Cameron half the time. It's like a boy versus a man. We got Josh Worrell sitting right there, who's a mobile big man. But of course, because we didn't have any plan for Dangerfield, we had Josh Worrell sitting on Dangerfield half the time. So, and there was just no. It didn't seem to me like they sat down at selection and really thought about who they were playing against, because I felt like selection was arrogant. When Zach Taylor came on, by Nick's own admission, they couldn't get him to where they wanted him to go. They didn't really have a plan for him. I mean, that's just horrendous. To me, it's arrogance, but it's arrogance born on the fact that our coaching group are crutching on having the best forward line in the last 500 years and just hoping that we give them enough opportunities. But Chris Scott absolutely slaughtered Matthew Nicks in the coach's box. As soon as they started running the ball by hand, they exceeded their annual average, or their season average in handballs, Geelong. It was the only noticeable difference in the stats, is that Geelong ran the ball by hand and they just ran through us. And we didn't have the legs or the discipline to structure up defensively to stop their run, and they just killed us. And in the end, in the last quarter, we couldn't even get it out of defence.
Yeah, look, you're totally right. It would have been actually a good week for have somebody like a Bond in the team, because he did not play. He did not play in the heat, and he's a very good stopper. And you could take your pick on about 3 players he could be put on to stop. Bailey Smith had a picnic. Holmes had a picnic. Dangerfield was always dangerous. Dempsey was dangerous, but I mean, the first 3 I mentioned, they're the ones you would be looking at, particularly Bailey Smith and Holmes. They killed it, slaughtered us, and they just ran around unchecked.
Well, this is the last thing I'll say about coaching, Mac, is that I have been observing with the engine room analysis how poor we are defensively set up at centre bouncers. And whilst we did quite well statistically in terms of getting our share of centre bouncers, they absolutely flogged us defensive side. The amount of times they walked the ball out of centre on defensive side possessions, and bloody Bailey Smith just coming through the back end of that contest, it was starting to actually hurt my feelings. It was that consistent. And at no stage did we try to change our structure.
No. If we did, I didn't pick it up. It just looked like we just were hoping that the same old would get us there, but it obviously wasn't going to get us there. I mean, when they picked up those goals so quickly in the second quarter, and I was fearing the second half. I was relatively pleased with our third quarter, but knowing that the last quarter was probably going to tell on us. And and the very players that I just mentioned, I mentioned earlier, they were running around like unregistered chooks. I mean, unregistered dogs and headless chook, to put the two together. But seriously, I've never seen people running around like that in an AFL game with nobody within cooey of them. They just had nobody tagging, nobody stopping them, and they just got that ball into their forward line so easily. And when you've got Dangerfield and Cameron down there, and that's not having a crack at the defence, it's always going to be hard to stop quality players like that from scoring. And the ball's just coming in too easy.
Well, they scored 5 goals directly from centre bounce, Mac. And they scored 10 goals from a forward half, so a repeat entry, right? So they scored their abilities, particularly in the second half, to have repeat forward 50 entries by breaking down our transition was the thing that won them the game. In the end, they just sat back and picked us off on the way out. And as you say, towards the end of that last quarter in particular, whether it was fatigue or pressure or what, we just started making some very bad skill errors and bad decisions, and we couldn't get the ball to where our strength was. Now, Riley Thilthorpe goes into the ruck halfway through the second quarter and absolutely kills it. Why, considering we're not able to get the ball down to him in the last quarter, why wouldn't you get him up the ground and get him involved? Why wouldn't you get your Rolls Royce into the game?
Well, I was thinking exactly the same thing at the time, Shane, as you said, that when he had his turn on the ball, he actually looked like he was controlling the ruck there when he went in there, and of course he's mobile and he's with his him. It's not just finished.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's the point I get at. With Rob, he makes an effort at the ball, and he's not going to be of any use after that. Where Thilthorpe could have done that, and we needed everything going right for us in that last quarter. So, yeah, look, their coach is a coach that's been a good coach for a very, very long time, and he will always adjust to the situation. Sometimes he won't have the cattle to win, but one thing you do know, that he will really make a coaching error. Unfortunately, that doesn't apply to us. Nick doesn't seem to learn, and if he just keeps on doing the same old things, and the same old things cost us every time.
Well, it was quite obvious. I think in Matthew Nix's press conference after the game, he made mention of the fact that Chris got changed his game plan. Geelong changed the game plan.
They did. You could see that.
And, you know, he almost, you know, said that with a tone of reverence. It's like, well, that's your job as a coach, is to see what's going on and to make adjustments. Now, we needed... Riley O'Brien hasn't taken a contested mark this season, and nor has he looked like taking one this season. We needed someone to be able to clunk a mark. Riley Thilthorpe was getting double teamed up forward because Chris Scott isn't an idiot. So we needed to get Riley up the ground. We needed to get him to take some contested marks on the wing, or at least provide a contest and a few second efforts. And the fact that he didn't think at any stage to shut Bailey Smith down, to get Riley Thilthorpe into the game, to match up more defensively at centre bounce, to maybe change our transition strategy out of back 50, because we needed to start running instead of just bombing it. Mitch Hinge just kept kicking it back to them. You know, none of these things happened, and it wasn't evident that he tried to make any of those things happen. So this is the problem that I see, and I you know, a lot of people give me a hard time when I talk about this because, it's like we're 3-2 and we've played really well and la 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 la. But we have now lost 2 games to finals contenders, and we've been worked out both times. So, you know, I think next week, I'm not going to hit the panic button just yet, but next week is a real test for us in terms of how we play and how we match up against a hard finals contending side, Mac.
Well, I think you're right. GWS, you know, they're always a hard side to beat. Always a hard side to beat. And there's no fairy fly football against them. You've got to be 100% fair dinkum. And, yeah, that will be a measure of where we're at. Peatling, apparently he's been suspended for a game.
Yeah, which I reckon is a bit stiff. The only thing against him was that he had the arms pinned.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking of the wrong tackle, because I thought there was one tackle where he tackled where the guy had his arms out, and I thought surely not that one. But they did get a free for it. I thought it
was in the middle. He got a free paid against for sling. The guy got up and played on. There was no concussion test or anything like that. There were no protocols at all. So I thought initially he would get off maybe with a fine. But the only thing I can think of, the reason why he got a week, is because he tackled him with his arms pinned, so the potential for injury was high.
Yeah, look, if he had his arms pinned, well, I was thinking of the wrong tackles. So if he had his arms pinned, well, I think that does make it turn into a dangerous tackle, because it could go astray quite easily.
Yeah, I mean, look, they rated it medium impact, and this is where it gets a bit dodgy, because to me, high impact is if you knock the bloke out. Medium impact is if he goes off and has concussion protocols. Low impact is if he gets up and plays on. So on that basis, the guy got up and played on. So it should be low impact in my thinking, in my logic, which would mean that James would get a fine. But they've rated it medium impact. Whether the club have a dip at that rating to see if they can get it down, I don't know. James has had a good couple of games. It would be a shame to lose him against GWS. So it'll be interesting to see if the club have a dip at appealing. Yeah,
look, I would if it's as you say, if it was only very the guy got straight up, I would have a crack at it. But yeah, and the lot of him is going to hurt, because last week, not before the one before the Gold Coast, because that is last week, the Gold Coast. The Geelong game, the Gold Coast game, and in the second half, I thought he was our best player, and then I thought he had a reasonably good game again on the weekend. I thought he was our best midfielder. So it's going to hurt not having him, because he does break away quickly, and he does earn a hard ball. So yeah, and I think he's actually, apart from Rankin, I think he's probably getting close to being our best midfielder. Saligo had a quietish one, but he's going to have to lift his
Saligo was
game
thrown
up.
up on the sidelines at 3/4 time. He was cooked.
Oh, okay. So, well, and really, what you really say is that there were players, not necessarily all of them, but some of the players really did suffer badly from the heat and the 5-day rest.
Well, and you don't want to use it as an excuse, because I think the bigger issue was the fact, I think it was our third game in 11 days. And if you put, a hot one in the middle of that, then it's not ideal. But as I mentioned at the start of the show, Macca, that's not a secret. And they're privy to far more data than what we have. And we've got, a world-renowned bloody fitness dude and, millions of dollars worth of coaches and facilities and all the rest of it. Why come in and try to kick Geelong off the park?
Yeah, but it's certainly keeping it open like that does open up the possibility of it going back the other way, really. And that did happen. You just make a bad error, and yeah, when we got a good lead, you think you really get tightened up a bit, but that's not how Nick does it. I don't. Well, I don't really think he is the right coach for us. I think we've got a fair bit of talent there, and I think we should be doing a bit better than that.
Well, I mean, I don't want to get too far into it, because I think next week will be the time to talk about that. But I will say that I'm starting to really worry, Mac, that we've got a squad that's good enough to make finals, but a coach that isn't good enough to win it. And that just gives you a Ken Hinkley cycle. And I haven't got 10 years to burn waiting for that to play out. I haven't got it in me. But that's the real danger, that he's good enough to make finals because of the squad, and he'll get an extension on the back and make him finals. But he's not actually good enough to take a good squad and turn them into a premiership winning side.
Yeah, look, I think that's a very good summary, and I can't argue with one word you said. That's my fear as well. But it's like maybe like a Damien Hardwick, who if he had this team, he might be making into a very, very good team. Whereas with Nick's, will just be a good team, and it doesn't go as far as it probably could. It has a certain amount of potential. A good coach will get 100% of that potential, and I don't think Nick's can do that.
Well, I mean, look at Gold Coast as an example of a coach making a difference. They've had amazing talent through that club over the last few years and not made anything of it. Their last coach, Stewie Dew, couldn't get them, above 12th spot or whatever. Now, there hasn't been huge changes to that list since Hardwick took over. In fact, he's got rid of, Lukosius and, one or two others, and he's changed things around a little bit. But by and large, he's coaching the same group. And yet, for all intents, I don't know whether you watched the game against North Melbourne, and yes, it was only North Melbourne, but North had a real dip, the same as they did against us up at Lyndoch. And the thing that struck me about Gold Coast is that they're finally playing like a real footy team. They were hard when they needed to be. They run hard. They work for each other. They have real grunt about them. We always used to say that Gold Coast had no heart. Well, I think they're playing with heart now, and I think a lot of that is down to the coach, mate.
100%. Like when we played them, I mean, in days gone by, that they would never have held up. But yeah, that they will definitely play finals this year. They will play finals, and if they continue on with the type of form they're playing, they could well win a final as well. Because Hardwick can coach. He can coach. He's proven that.
So that therein lies, I think, my issue is that on talent we're pretty close to to Gold Coast, I think. They might have more talent spread across the ground, but I think, we maybe have them for a bit of high-end talent. But certainly we can match them talent-wise. But all the talent in the world isn't going to get you a grand final or a premiership if you're not well coached. And if you haven't got a coaching group, and this isn't just Nick's, this is the coaching group, Macca. What do they sit down at selection and talk about? They obviously, it's not as if Geelong are a surprise. There's no secret in how Geelong play. And, Stewart goes down, they just roll the next guy in, the Blitzars comes in, and they just do the same thing. They had 2 going up on Thilthorpe all night. What did Nicks think that they were going to do with Thilthorpe? Obviously, they were going to go heavy on him.
Yeah, well, the one thing that did work in our favour with that, of course, is that Fogarty got he got the benefit of that really, and Fogg ended up with 4 goals, and I thought he made the most of his opportunities. But Thilthorpe is a match winner, and has proven that he can be a match winner, and they made sure that didn't happen.
Sorry, mate. The other thing, of course, is the ease with which opposition teams are taking out of our forward 50, Mac. And it was apparent to me on Thursday night that whenever there was a kick in or a rebound out of defence, we let them almost have free possession up until the wing. It looked like we were just guarding space.
We did. No, not look like we did. I was really angry about that. We just kept dropping back, and they're gaining almost up the centre wing before we actually start to put in any pressure at all. And I'm thinking, this is stupid. We're allowing them about 60 metres, 80 metres at times without making any effort to resist it. Yeah.
It was bizarre. It really was. And it's been like that for a little while. And I'll tell you, if there's another flaw, because we know that Nick's in the coaching group like to play our half forwards up pretty high. So we tend to have an extra around the contest, around stoppage, because you don't trust our midfielders. When you're playing 3 talls, Mac, you have to have smalls at their feet, right?
That's a very, very big must, yeah.
But we don't do that. We have them playing up. And so how many times did you see the ball come to ground 30 metres out from our goal and us not having any smalls around because we're all playing high?
Yeah, the nearest we had to anybody trying to shark it was Walker at times.
Yeah, well, that's right.
That's actually factual. I remember him trying to shark it several times because there was no small there. So you're quite right.
It's another logical flaw in our game plan. I don't mind us playing the 3 talls. It's a point of difference and all that. And particularly when Thilthorpe starts getting double teamed, and this is where I would have thought having someone like Rankin at just Isaac, you're 75-80% fit. We're not going to run you much through the midfield. What we want you to do is sit at the feet of Riley Thilthorpe all night and kick 4 goals.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be very handy. But and I think using Rankin as a midfielder, I wouldn't have helped his fitness anyway. If he was a dubious fitness, that certainly wouldn't have helped him. And I'll say this: the guy is good enough he picked up 25 possessions, he kicked 2 goals, but he still wasn't as damaging as he could have been. I see in the chat somebody reckon he doesn't work hard enough, but that's not fair comment. I don't think for this week anyhow, because he's, he was doubtful whether he was going to play or not, and to come up with 25 possessions and he took 4 and he did lay 4 tackles and he kicked a couple of goals. I think that's a good effort for a bloke that's in dubious condition.
The only thing that I'll say about Isaac, and I don't think it's actually work rate, I think it's actually concentration. And I've said this before, Macca, and again it was quite evident on Thursday night. He ball watches. So when the ball at centre bounces, and even sometimes at stoppage, although he's a bit more mobile at stoppage, But at centre bounces, if the tap doesn't go on his side, he's not watching his man. He's not thinking defensively. He's watching the ball because he's an opportunist, right? And he's stationary while he's watching the ball. And half the reason why we were getting done so much on the defensive side is because it was quite often his player that was coming across and actually doing the damage or providing a block or whatever. Isaac is flat-footed when the ball's not coming to him at centre bounce. And someone amongst the vast millions of dollars worth of coaching staff that we have at the club should be able to see that, because little old Joe me sitting at my computer analysing centre bounces, it sticks out like bloody dog's balls, Macca. So why aren't they? Because he's obviously not played a huge amount of midfield in his life. He's been mostly a forward. So you need to give him those sorts of illustrations. And again, it makes me wonder, what the hell do they do at the club that they're not showing him this and going, Isaac, you got to get mobile at centre bounces.
Yeah, well, look, it's a reasonable comment you make, and I'll actually have to. I hadn't really picked it up myself then, but I have no doubt that you're right, because they did often take the ball out so easily out of the centre that I didn't really pick up who.
I'm very disappointed that you haven't been watching my engine room analysis videos, Macca, but I would highly recommend that you go back and have a look at a couple, because I highlight it there. It's quite visible that he is flat-footed when the ball's coming to his side, or when he's in the play. He's very dynamic, and he's a clearance machine, right? He's got such a good step, and he's got such a good ability to read the bounce. But when it's on the other side, he is too busy watching the ball like you would a marking contest. So as a small player, if the ball's coming in at a marking contest, you're watching the ball, and you're also watching the big guys to see where the ball hits and what side it's going to bounce out. Isaac does that when the ball's not coming on his side. He watches the ball, and he doesn't watch his direct opponent.
Yeah, no, I'll take your word, but I want to watch very closely next time, because I had not picked that up. I didn't realise whose player it was actually killing us at the time.
Well, it wasn't only Isaac's, but I'm just saying that Isaac's player often gets involved. And this is not just the Geelong game, it's been across the board, win or lose. I highlighted it in the St Kilda game. It's something that he does.
Yeah, it would help though if we had a ruckman that could actually get it to a player, though. That would help.
Well, yes and no. I'm no fan of Riley O'Brien's, particularly at the moment, because of his lack of work around the ground. But the one thing you can't criticise him for is centre bounce stuff, because he is so predictable, Macca, that there is no reason why our midfield should not know every time where the ball is going to go.
Look, 100% agree with that particular comment, because he'll hit it there whether they're standing there or whether we're standing there. And
that's right. It's left or right. Left or right.
Yeah, exactly. It's every time. Every time. There's only one spot to go to. If he gets a lot, tap, and he does get a lot of tap. But it's look, our opposition though, they seem to know better than we do, because they're usually occupying that spot.
The thing, half the time Riley gets taps, and he taps at where the opposition ruckman was going to tap it anyway. You can see on the video, you can see both their hands going to the same spot. Like, he's got no clue. Around stoppage, he'll tap it wherever it works for him, and he doesn't care whether it's in the bloody corridor in defence or wherever the hell. He doesn't and I don't know how they work out effective hit-outs or the hit-out stat or whatever, but when you actually look at what's happening, you can see that he's got He's got two. He's got this or he's got this, and he literally can't hit the ball forward. At centre bounce, he cannot hit the ball forward. So you can forget all about the zone in front of him because it's not going there. It's not, the only time it's going there is if the opposition ruckman hits it there. Riley O'Brien is not, he's not hitting it in front of him. He's not hitting it behind him. He's hitting it to the left or he's hitting it to the right.
I can't argue with you because that's exactly what happens.
And we got 3 blokes in there that have been rucking to him or roving to him or whatever for however long, and all the training and all the rest of it. And I just don't know how we haven't got that worked out.
Well, okay, I think it's unarguable because week after week I just watch him and I keep thinking he's always just going to tap it in the same spot every bloody time, and why aren't we there? Or the ideal situation normally is if you know where it's going to go, you actually go back a couple of metres and run it, and so you can take it at pace rather than being standing still. But we don't seem to. We seem to think he's going to go to a new spot. He doesn't do it.
Yeah. Anyway, look, to be honest with you, I think that's just as much on the ground players as it is on the ruckman. My biggest gripe with O'Brien is that when we need a bloke to stand up and take a contested mark, we can't rely on him. And he's our ruckman. He's our biggest bloke on the ground sort of thing. And we need him to muscle up and take a couple of contested grabs. And he's just not providing that. And to me, if he's not going to provide that, his ruck work is not anywhere near good enough to justify taking that one on the chin in order to keep him in the side. And I'd be thinking about having the young lad in just to see how he goes and maybe do a 50-50 split with Thilthorpe.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned about the marking around the ground. I could remember one mark that he took, so I had to look up the stats to see how he did take, and that was the only one that he took. One mark around the ground for a ruckman. That puts you pretty well down the tube because, I mean, the guys that he was rucking against, they did take marks around the ground. So they did have an influence on that.
Not one contested mark for the season, Macca. Not one for the season.
Okay. I didn't realise it was quite that bad. I knew it was bad, but that's horrific.
And I know that Riley Thilthorpe is going to be a premier forward in the competition. But I'm telling you right now, if you put him in the ruck, he'd probably be in the top 2 ruckmen in the competition.
Yes, he's certainly got the ability to do that.
And we don't play him enough in the ruck. And particularly on Thursday night, if we want to get back to Thursday night. On Thursday night, there was a real opportunity, in my opinion, just to switch things up a bit. Not so much for his centre bounce work, but for his ability then to be in and around the contest and involved in the game, because he just offers so much in that capacity. And we had him wasting away down at full forward with 2 blokes on him. It was just poor. So anyway. A lot of worries, in my opinion, and as I said, as soon as Geelong flicked the switch and started running at us and breaking through our structure, we didn't have the gas to shut them down, and we didn't try to shut them down structurally at all.
Well, whether we had the legs to do that is another thing, but we did have a lot of players that either just had bad games, or they didn't come up at all after the 5 days. Because I know we will get into that later, but yeah, there's 2 or 3 that really had shocking games, and that did not help.
You look at a bloke like Mitch Hinge. He's a classic example. I thought Mitch's first half was excellent, and then as the game got older, he started making errors, And to me, those errors were fatigue errors. They were skill errors, you know, not enough air in the kick, or, you know, not hitting a handball, or you know, stuff like that. I think he was a classic indicator of what our squad was suffering, or not suffering, but experiencing in terms of fatigue, because I felt like our disposal went down the toilet in the second half. We were even disposals that we were hitting. It's little things, you know, Mac, like, you know, putting the ball to the advantage of your teammate. We started to handball behind. We started to kick it on people's heads. You know, just those little things that stop your flow, or give your opposition a sniff. You know, having to stop and wait, or, you know, stuff like that. And that started to creep in at the back end of the second quarter and then into the second half. And I would have thought what happened in the last few minutes of the first and the second quarter would have given Nix and the staff an indication that we weren't running out quarters, and maybe the second half was going to need to be a bit of a grind.
And I think that's what we should have made it. But because the more that there was a running game, the more we were going to get found out. And Geelong, actually, they changed it and they made it into a running game, and
that's right.
And that's where they got us.
Yeah, that's right. So, you know, and also I guess the other thing that I would say just before we move on from this is that it's all well and good to be a scoring team off turnover, but if you're going to rely on defensive half turnovers for your scoring, then you're leaving yourself very vulnerable to repeat entries. And what I felt Geelong did very well was cover up so that when the ball did get turned over in their forward 50, there was a 50-50 chance of them getting a return inside 50 because of the way they were able to cover up. But we were allowing them, as we said at the beginning, Mac, we were allowing them basically half the ground, almost uncontested.
Yeah, I just couldn't understand that. And I was getting very angry actually when I was watching that. And there was abuse flying at the screen, I can tell you. Because I just thought to myself, why would you do that? Because you're automatically putting yourself under pressure in your defence, because you're letting them get up to the bloody wing without any pressure. So, and then they only just need one good kick at the next one, and it's a shot at goal. It's bloody stupid. It is. I thought it was an absolutely stupid philosophy. Yeah.
So look, I think the bottom line for me, I mean, Nick's admitted that they didn't train during the week. It was all about recovery, and that's understandable, I guess. But it showed. It showed in the planning. It showed in the execution of whatever they were trying to do. That as soon as things got switched up, and they became a little bit fatigued, they really didn't know what to do, and we reverted back to our old, can't get out of defence, can't generate any run, not creating any options, that sort of stuff. And the game was really gone halfway through the third quarter, to be honest.
Well, I must admit, in the third, as I said, I reckon that the very costly period that was in that second quarter thing when they got those 3 goals through sloppiness on our part, and if we could have held on to a 5-goal lead at half time, I would have felt more confident about us lasting the distance. But when it got down to the fact that 5-goal evaporated into about 11 points or whatever it was, I can't remember exactly. I thought to myself, geez, this is going to be a hard grind in the second half to hang on.
Yeah.
And so it proved.
Yeah.
So it proved because...
Well, except that it wasn't a grind. We should have made it a grind, but it wasn't a grind. It continued to be a shootout.
I've got visions of Bailey Smith running around like an unregistered dog everywhere, and if he didn't, it was Holmes doing it, and if he didn't do it, bloody Dangerfield decided he'd do it. And perhaps Cameron joined in as well. Dempsey running everywhere.
Yeah, and they sat Atkins on Dawson, and why I would have actually lined up with Geordie going head to head on Dangerfield. Do you know that, Mac?
Well, I would have had to do something because, Atkins did a reasonably good job on Dawson. Dawson didn't have his normal effect on the game at all. So, unfortunately, we just allowed it to continue to happen rather than making any change.
Yeah. To me, Jordan would have been the perfect matchup for Dangerfield. He's good enough in the air, and he's a good enough player at ground level. I would have done a Phil Walsh and just gone head-to-head. Dawson v Danger, just like Phil did Danger v Fife that time. And it would have allowed us to bring in some fresh legs into the midfield, and given Chris Scott something to think about, because Jordan would have probably got Danger going the other way with his exits out of 50. It would have made things would have made us just that little bit more interesting to play against, and given Chris Scott some decisions to make. But we just went stock standard, plan A, no change, just work harder for longer, which is the Ken Hinkley special. And we've got Ken Hinkley light, Mac. I'm telling you right now. We've got Ken Hinkley light.
So that means that's a little bit worse than Ken Hinkley.
Anyway, all right. Look, let's stop with all that.
Yeah, can I just ask you one question, though? I just thought there were 2 or 3 players that played so badly that they can't front up next week. Yeah, I'll just throw that one at you to think about and come back to me with. Because
go ahead.
Stoll.
Yes.
7 disposals. He cannot play next week, surely.
Well, unfortunately for Lockie, he's a very, very neat player. He's got beautiful skills. He'll run hard. All the rest of it, physically, he's not an AFL footballer, Mako. And in these games, like, he did very well in the first couple of weeks when they were both running games, and he could come in off the square, and he could link up, and he could do all that sort of stuff, and that's great, fantastic. And he's a very, very, very good footballer, but he is not built for AFL football, and he is unfortunately not a dissimilar player to Rory Atkins. And Rory had the same problem. So a skilled player, did very well when everything was on his terms, but when the going got tough, and I'm not saying that Lockie Scholl shirked it or anything like that, he just fades out of the game. He doesn't know how to inject himself into a game when the opposition is playing hard, tough footy.
Yeah, and on their performances on the weekend, Crouch and Laird. Yeah, but neither of those 2 players excited me with their game, and maybe the conditions, but both. I think both of them let us down badly.
Well, we're back to this issue with Matt Crouch, Macca, where he gives us nothing going the other way.
That's what happened. I agree, 100%.
And
that's why I raised him.
And he's not even Nick keeps going on saying he's a distributor and all the rest of it. Again, I would encourage people to look at that engine room analysis, because that's not actually the role that he's playing. He's just playing a stock standard midfield role, just like everyone else. Right? So in the first week, or first couple of weeks, I think we were encouraged because he was getting the ball to boot and kicking the ball forward, and it was like, all right, Matty, you got with the program and all the rest of it, and if you're getting 30 and doing that with it, great, But again, coming up against good midfields, he is found wanting, and he was nowhere on Thursday night, and he was nowhere the week before, and he's another one that will be flat-footed and ball watch, and it was particularly evident against Gold Coast. Against Essendon around stoppage, that he would sit back and ball watch, and his opponent would just go through him. He would allow himself to get blocked far too easily. He wouldn't fight for position at all. And in general plays, he doesn't offer us anything. So, again, until we move on from Matt Crouch, just the same as, Hawthorn moved on from Tom Mitchell, and other clubs have moved on from that type of player, we are going to be hamstrung and less dynamic than we should be in centre bounce attendances. And not forgetting that when Matt Crouch is in centre bounce, we don't have someone like Rankin or Peatling or someone like he's taking someone else's minutes. So it's a double banger. In terms of Rory Laird, this is why I felt like we needed to have Hugh Bond in, because again, Rory Laird is not a defender. And at the moment we have a couple of... Miller is not a defender either, although I didn't think Wayne played too badly on Thursday night. But some of the defensive efforts that Rory Laird put in, and then what annoyed me even further was then when his opponent got the ball, Lairdy was pointing at teammates going, well, why didn't you cover? And I was thinking to myself, well, why didn't you get on him?
That's their comment. And in the chat, some of the Jabbo said you can't have both Laird and Miller. You need to go with one. And that's exactly the point where I was heading to. If you're going to have Miller, you can't have Laird.
Correct.
And look, you've got Nankervis who can play the role well, and he plays it tightly and then traditionally, and he can be defensive and attacking. So I just think and I think Laird's getting towards the end of his career. Miller has one say. His one saving was that he is loose. I reckon he's loose as a defender, but when he does have the ball, he's very attacking and he can actually do some very good things with it.
Well, just analyse what you just said, because I think there might be some recency or some memory bias there, because when was the last time you saw Wayne Miller hit a 40-metre pass?
Well, I can't specifically say I remember one, but...
I know, just put you on the head. My point is that he is now the master of the 20-metre chip.
Yeah. Okay, you're saying that they're not long passes, they're short passes.
Well, he's not actually hurting the opposition with his disposal marker. That's the problem. You want like a bloke like Mitch Hinge, and let's forget his errors in the second half for a minute, because I reckon he was cooked. But Mitch Hinge, when he hits a pass, it's slicing through the opposition's zone. But Wayne Miller doesn't do that.
No, we can't afford to have halfback flankers with Miller and Laird like they are. I don't think so. And but the ones that I identified that I thought really, really let us down was Scholl really, really badly. Crouch and total lack of defence, as you said. Laird, as again, he might have got a fair bit of the ball, but his opponent also gets plenty of it too. And Miller is a little bit in the same category as well. That he may have had 22 possessions, but his opponent may have got several possessions that ended up in goals for Geelong. So I just think that particular line is not tight enough.
I felt like Miller. There were a couple of times where he had to go and he went. So I actually didn't mind his attack on the ball. You're right, he's not a one-on-one defensive player, but I felt he was better than Laird. I would have... See, the thing is, Mac, and this is what we always say, and a lot of people that listen to our show give us shit in the comments about being too negative and all the rest of it. But the way Matt Crouch plays, the way Rory Laird plays, the way Wayne Miller plays, the way Lachie Scholl plays, that's not a surprise. That's what they've been giving us, like the whole time, their whole careers, right? They haven't morphed into these players. They've always been these players, right? So at what point do you go, all right, well, I've seen enough of that? A bit like the Lachie Murphy selection last week. Lockie Murphy gave us exactly what he always gives us, right? And it's not Lockie's fault. That's what he gives us. That's what he brings. So you've seen what he brings. Why go back to that well if it's not working for the team? So we've got 3 or 4 players that we know exactly what they're going to bring every week, and they bring it every week, exactly that same game. You know, Letty will have 30 touches sitting on the outside waiting to be on the end of a disposal chain. You know, Miller will give us, 15, 20-metre kicks. Lockie Shaw will be in or out of the game depending on what style of game it is. You know, these blokes are going to give us the same thing. We've got blokes in the twos, Macca, that are wasting careers who can offer more, and Nix and co are not giving them the opportunity. And blokes like Charlie Edwards, Oscar Ryan, Billy Dowling, Luke Pedler, Sam Berry, Harry Schoenberg, Hugh Bond, the list goes. I've just reeled off half a dozen off the top of my head. There's probably a couple more. These blokes have been on our list now, like Oscar Ryan and Charlie Edwards have been on our list now for 3 years. Haven't had a look in. And they've had some bloody good SANFL game, and we all know that SANFL form isn't necessarily an indicator. So if you think that they've got the chops, put them in. Give them an opportunity.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I mean, Oscar Ryan was supposed to be ready to play AFL footy last year, and he's never got an opportunity. And now here we are another year later, and he's still not getting an opportunity. And to me, I mean, Dempsey was playing a half-forward flank for them, and he had 21 disposals and kicked a couple of goals, and he also set up several goals. So, I mean, we just weren't good enough on our half-back flanks. Just weren't good enough at all.
No. So, again, it'll be interesting to see how they approach GWS. I suspect that they'll go 5-day break. The boys are fresh now. We'll give them another opportunity.
I think you're right.
Because that's how they roll. Unfortunately.
Yeah, and look, we're going to be without Peatley. So we're going to need another a midfielder. I think it would be... Who would you actually bring in? I mean, Billy Dowling or Berry are the two options. But the trouble is, Berry and Crouch are very much alike in terms of...
Bite your tongue. Bite your tongue. Sam Berry is nothing like Matthew Crouch.
Okay, well, what I mean by that is that they're both guys that are good at getting the ball, hard ball out the centre. That's what their main thing is.
You are living in a dream world. Matthew Crouch does not play that role. It doesn't matter how many times Nix wants to tell you that. If you look at the footage, if you actually look at the footage, Macca, you will see that Matthew Crouch doesn't play any different to any of our other midfielders. In fact, he's got more uncontested positions this year than contested by a long way. He is not that in and under grunt player that they want you to think he is. He's not. He's just not.
Well, forget that. The point I was really trying to make is that we really need... What killed us against Geelong with their midfield was Bailey Smith, really, as I said, running around like an unregistered dog. Tons of run, umpteen possessions and getting it where it hurts you. Same with Holmes, who was classy. He really started off as a defender and became a midfielder. And he 32 disposal. That's the type of midfielder I'm talking about, a running midfielder, which we don't seem to have. And Berry and Crouch, I don't think
Harry Schoenberg.
Well, Harry is more likely in that type of role. I do agree. You need it, but we need a running midfielder, so the players that can actually, run around the ground and contribute to whatever's going on in a position, rather than just participate at throw-ins and bounces. They've got to play in the field, got to participate in the field play as well. And the more they do that, I'm not against Harry coming in. I mean, he probably would be a very likely type to come in. And I've got time for Billy Dowling as a midfielder, but they don't seem to have time for Billy Dowling as a midfielder.
Is he a straight midfielder or is he a wingman, Mac? I'm not quite sure about Billy.
Billy always played midfield all his life until he came to the Crows, where he got stuck on a wing.
All right, okay.
When he played in the twos, he always played as a midfielder, and he only got stuck on a wing when he came up into the A's. It's very much what we did with it. Yeah, the bloke that we got from GWS when we did that same thing to him.
Yeah. Jackson Haitley, yeah.
I mean, Haitley played football as a midfielder.
Yeah, I got a lot of time for Billy Dowling. I've got a lot of time for Harry, as everyone knows. I've also got a lot of time for Sam Berry, as everyone knows. We need to see Charlie Edwards, Oscar Ryan. We need to see these blokes. We need to give Zach Taylor a bit more of a run, in a dedicated role. I would have, instead of Lockie Murphy, I would have brought Zach Taylor in to cover for Rash. I think that would have been a good role for him.
Yeah, 100%. I was very angry when they brought in Murphy, when they could have. It was ideal for Taylor. He should have been in that week.
Yeah. So, but again, we lament about our lack of good drafting and all the rest of it. And, in the last few years, I think we've probably turned that around. But what's the point in turning it around if you don't give them an opportunity?
Well, somebody should get an opportunity this week. And Billy Dowling, as I said, he's a midfielder, but they paid him on the wing. And I thought last year he played in the last 6 to 8 games, and I thought he played very well. And he would go much harder for a ball than Shoal would, and I really am off Shoal. I just thought he really, really did. He didn't like Piker. He just made sure he wasn't there, and
it just doesn't know how to get involved in hard. And again, Lockie Shoal could win a McGarry medal at SANFL level. He's a very, very good player, but this is no different to what we've seen from Lockie for the last 2 seasons. He'll play well in a running game. He'll go missing in a hard game. And guess what you get in finals? You don't get running games. You get hard games.
100%, Zane. And that's how you've got to really structure your side so that you're really capable of the game relapses into that style of game. And that is, as you said, that's how finals are played. But you're capable of doing that, and So look, I thought Dowling would be, in my mind, the player I would bring in. But the others that you mentioned, they're all vying for the one spot. So who knows who they will pick.
Well, they should be vying for 2, because I agree with you that Crouch should be out as well. And he won't be. I know that. Rory Laird won't be. I know that. We'll have one force change, and that'll be James Peatling, plus whatever injuries we've copped out of the game. I'm not sure whether he got any. And we'll just go to the well again. And I'm I don't want us to fail. I want us to I want to see us play finals and be successful. But
I do too.
I can't see the point of falling into the finals at 8th spot with the same old tired crew that we've had for the last 5 years and getting the same as what we've always got. The only reason we are playing better so far this year is because we've injected talent into that team and the young kids have got more experience. It's got nothing to do with evolution of game plan, because Matthew Nicks has not got any idea how to score and defend at the same time. So in 23, we're a high-scoring, rebounding team. We kick, massive scores every week, but we can't defend. So in 24, he goes the other way, ultra defensive. We can't score. Now we're back at this. We can't defend. He does not seem to have the ability to come up with a game plan or structure the players to be able to protect the downside. You know, when you kick 100 points and lose, and we've had high scores kicked against us the previous week before that, the previous week before that, that's got to tell you something.
It certainly does. And the other thing too is that you should be adjusting your game plan to who's available and who's not available. You mentioned much earlier tonight about the fact that we had the 3 tools, but we didn't have the smalls. We've got Rochelle missing at the moment out of our side, who's a very, very good player in that particular area. So, you know, if you've got one of your strengths missing there, you just have to adjust slightly so to allow for the fact that he's not there. You can't play as if he's there when he's not. So, you know, you just
I
have
agree
to
100%, Macca. You've got to be realistic and pragmatic about how you play and how you select your side. And this is, again, why I was shocked that we went small in defence. Because as it was, we were light on in defence with Nick Murray not there. And all of a sudden we take another tool out. You know, and that's fine if you've got a plan. But then we didn't replace that tool with a lockdown small. So we got what we got. Anyway, people are probably bored shitless of our bloody negative Nancy, but I think for people who are laid into this podcast over the last year or two, hasn't this been a consistent theme over the last bloody 5 or 6 years, Macca?
Well, you know, I guess in our defence, both of us, all we really want is for the Adelaide Football Club to be the best football club in the land and to be the best version of itself that it's possible. And we both feel that the coach doesn't utilise, he's got certain resources available to him, and in some games you've got them all, some games you don't have them all. So the games you don't have them all, you've got to adjust your game plan to allow for that. And I think we've just got a bloke that rolls out the same game plan all the time, irrespective of who we're playing against and whatever their strengths are. And that's what our criticism really is about, isn't it?
Yeah, and, you know, for me, it's about, like, come up with something. It might not work. If I can see evidence that they're trying to do stuff, then it's like, all right, well, he tried to do this and he tried to do that, and I can see why he did this, and I can see why they made that selection, and it didn't work. Well, you know, at least they gave it a crack. But we don't see that. We don't see any semblance of effort to change up the way. And Nix comes out and acknowledges that Chris Scott changes his game plan as if it's some sort of revelation. So my next question is, if I was a journo, was going, well, Matthew, what did you do? Oh, we just tried to play harder for longer, because that's what Uncle Ken told me.
That's a bit cruel leaking into Kenny.
No, mate, that's where he learned, at bloody Port.
Well, he did actually. Sadly, you're right.
Yeah. No, look, all right. And having said that, we did play very well in the first quarter and a half.
We did. Great footy.
Our natural talent was on show. We did trouble Geelong with our 3-tool setup. Fogarty got off the chain. Tex also, I thought, played all right, to be honest with you. But what happened with managing Tex?
Yeah, no, I'm not against that. If Tex was filling up to it, and I think Tex performed adequately anyhow. I think no credit. There will be a game there, but apparently in some ways he's left it up to Tex to say.
No, but see, that's bloody wrong. And Vardy says in the chat, and I agree with him, Tex wants 300, and
of course he does.
Like Matthew Nix at the beginning of the season said, this season it's going to be about the squad, not about the team. And there are going to be times where we're going to have to rest Tex, and there's times we're going to have to manage players and all the rest of it. Isaac Rankin has dodgy hammy, so there's going to be times where we're going to have to manage him. So you get this situation where we have 3 games in 11 days and Tex plays all 3 of them. Now, he might have got through, arguably, because I'm sure he's probably a bit bloody sore now. But how does that set him up for the next 3 or 4 weeks? You know, you can't tell me that his loads, as they like to call it these days, are appropriate for a 34, 35-year-old body with crook hips and feet and all the rest of it, and lower back.
Look, I understand what you're saying, and there's a lot of truth in it. But I suppose, having lost the last game, I think that, I think if we'd won the last game, I think he may have rested Tex for this one. But I think that there was also a little bit of really, really wanting to win it, and really, thinking that Tex would give us the best chance of that as well. And I think, in fairness, I think Tex performed reasonably well, and he did some very good things.
I'm not saying that he didn't, Mako. I'm just saying we've got alternatives. We could have played Dan Curtin up forward as a third tall and kept the same structure.
Yeah, look, but I don't think for one moment that Curtin would have done some of the things that Tex did either, because he's still in the learning stage.
But he takes a blow. See, you're just as bad as they are. You want to keep going back to the well. Like, we've got to manage Tex out. And you've got to cop the fact that at times it's not appropriate for him to play.
Yeah, look, in general, I think you're right. But being gathered around and being an important game, I just think that if I'd been the coach, I would have played him, and I maybe rested him next week. So
right. Well, I reckon he doesn't play 15 games this season.
Sorry?
If they don't manage him, he won't get past 15 games this season.
Oh, okay. Look, I'm sure he will get rested at some stage.
Yeah, righto.
No, I think he will at some stage.
He'll get rested when he's injured. That's when he'll get rested.
Maybe, we'll see.
It's not it will not be a genuine rest, because if Tex is fit, Tex will demand play. The end.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. But this was, we played, 4 games? Only 4 games. So
5.
5 games? I can't remember. 5, is it?
Yeah. With 3 and 2.
Yeah, with 3 and 2. Yeah. Yeah, so he has played 5. That's probably a little bit more than I thought that he's doing in a row. But
Yeah. You haven't got the others here to shield. You haven't got the others here to shield you this week.
No, but I don't really think he was the reason that we lost the game.
No, but I'm just saying it's just another. I'm just saying it's another part of this bullshit coaching philosophy that he trots out. Oh, it's going to be all about the squad this year, not about the team. And we're going to have to manage this bloke and that bloke. Rubbish. We keep playing Crouch. We keep playing Laird. We keep bloody playing Tex. We trot out Lockie Murphy, for God's sakes. I mean, it's the same old shit that we've always seen. And what he says and what he does are 2 different things. And I guess it's nothing against Tex. Tex has had a really good start to the season. Nothing against him. I want to get the most out of Tex because he has been so good. I don't want him falling over and having a 5-week layoff because we haven't managed him properly. That's my point. It's not against Tex at all. It's been fantastic.
No, look, and I understand what you're saying. I don't rate Nick either as a coach. And, really, the last shred of faith I ever had in Nick disappeared when he trotted out Lockie Murphy last week. Seriously. There are so many players in the twos that should be in there before Murphy. Murphy's a proven failure. He's an absolutely proven failure. And he got, well,
let's not use words like failure. Let's just say, because Lockie tries his guts out, and there's been games in the past where we have absolutely lauded his work ethic and his ability to crash in and under and all the rest of it. So let's not get carried away. But
I can't remember doing that.
Oh, yes. Come on, Mac. Oh, come on. I'm not saying recently,
Well,
but there have been one or two games where Lockie Murphy has played well. I think rather than use the word failure, we just use the word he's just not up to it.
No, he's not. No, he's not. I know you're saying. You're saying at least he tried, but even if he failed,
I just don't want to get personal, right? I'm really trying to steer away from personal slights. Like Lockie Scholl,
okay.
he's a great player. He's just not up to it. Lockie Murphy is a real trier. Tries very hard. Excellent SANFL player. He's not up to AFL standard.
I was just reading what they said in the chat. They'll probably. Thank you for that. You gave me a good laugh. Yeah, no, for no running one laughing. I won't read it out, but it was suggesting.
Mate, they can see the chat. Have you not ever watched any of our videos, for God's sakes?
Good God, no, mate. It's bad enough being in them. But what's you going to get?
That's the feedback I keep getting. But anyway, continue.
No. You got me laughing, Fee.
You walked into that.
I did, didn't I?
Yeah.
But we do need. Look, if I was the Adelaide Football Club coach, I would be making a couple of changes. And look, I would be, and we're playing GWS. And they've got a couple of very good midfielders. I think it'd be a good game. We got and we talked about who we might bring in. Bond would be a good bloke to bring in. You know, the guy's going to be he'll give 100%, and if you put him on a player, he will reduce his game. So, look, if you go to bring another bloke in, Bond would be as good as anybody to bring in against GWS.
So, I agree about Bond. I think he should have been in 2 weeks ago. Who do you put on Jesse Hogan? And while we talk, hang on. Let's not. So you do this to me all the bloody time. You're an arsehole. Let's just talk about some individuals, and then we'll talk about the rest of the weekend's results, and then we'll talk about next week, Macca.
You did that one with more, didn't we?
Jesus. God, I can't wait for the other two to be back. All right. I've just put in a few players. Again, not best or worst, or just a few. Isaac, we've talked about. 25 touches, 5 marks, 4 tackles, 4 clearances, 10 score involvements, 273 metres gained, considering he was a little bit hamstrung, pardon the pun, or that was a calf. He did the best he could. Probably wasn't his explosive self, I guess, and we've already talked about his defensive work, but I mean, you can't really ask more from the bloke.
No, I had him in my best 5, man.
Yep.
I only thought they only had 5 good players, and he was in there.
Yeah. Darcy Fogarty particularly went on a tear in the second quarter, kicked 4 goals, all in that quarter, had 15 disposals, 6 marks, 4 goals, 4 clearances. 4 clearances, I don't think that's right. 9 score involvements, 243 metres gained. Another bloke who I thought we needed to like. There's no point having your Rolls Royce parked in the garage, and I just felt our 3-headed monster was just completely out of the play in the second half from Geelong, the way Geelong set up, and I would have liked to have seen the coaching group get Thilthorpe, but also Fogg involved a bit more, maybe slingshot them up and back or something like that. I'm not sure, Macca, but you know, it just seemed a bit pointless having the Rolls Royce in the garage up forward when the ball really wasn't getting there.
Well, the irony is that in that quarter that Thilthorpe was out rucking, that's when Fogarty got his 4 goals.
Yeah. And
he had the forward line to himself, basically.
Yeah, that's right. It was our most dynamic period of the game. when Thilthorpe was in the ruck. Sorry, that's not Soligo in the picture there, but Jake Soligo, 15 touches, 4 clearances, 9 contested possessions, 6 score involvements, 296 metres gained. I felt like Jake tried really hard. He was obviously gassed. They didn't, the other thing that I've noticed, and I haven't got the stat, but I did read it somewhere and I looked it up and it's correct. Our midfield rotations have decreased. We used the combination of Soligo, Dawson, Crouch probably 75% of the time. So this big thing about us having a lot of rotations through the middle, he's now also reverted back to the tried and trusted thing. So we gassed Soligo, we gassed Rankin, we gassed Dawson. We got all these other. Peatling only had half a dozen centre bounce attendances for the match. Ben Keys didn't get a look. Zach Taylor didn't get a look, I don't think. We didn't select to see all these logical things that you would do. Oh, we're a bit cooked, so we're bringing some fresh select. Sid Draper didn't get much of a look through the middle.
No.
I don't know. Blah blah blah. Anyway, let's keep going.
Well, when something's not working, you've got to do something different, and that's where you come back to the criticism of like Kenny Mark II or whatever, or Kenny Light or whatever. But all these things should have been tried, Pete, because I mean, if you know you're struggling, going down with one particular structure, you change the structure. I mean, and we know that Geelong did that, but we didn't.
Yeah. Someone in the chat, I think it might have been Beepako, said Dawson out of the midfield. I don't disagree with that. He gets sat on when he's in the middle, and I feel like, and his disposal was terrible. 30% kicking disposal he went with. Disposal efficiency he went with on the weekend. Geordie Dawson. He was basically, I mean, to be frank with you, he was basically useless.
I honestly kept thinking when I was watching it that he's playing like a bit with some injury. He just wasn't pure Dawson. It just wasn't this. Didn't play the normally. He wasn't as confident. He wasn't as sure. He wasn't. His kicking wasn't as good. It just didn't seem to be right.
Yeah. So, I mean, imagine if we had a half back line that had Jordan Dawson and Mitch Hinge as the two flankers. That's not a bad half back line.
Yeah. No, it's not bad. It's not bad. But even
ultimately, do you think Jordan Dawson is a midfielder?
No, not really. But he does a good job in it. But he does do a good job when he does it. But I watched all of his career, and when in Sydney he was an outstanding backman. They put him on a wing. He was an outstanding wingman. And we've put him into the middle, and he's done a very good job there as well. But somebody else got already stealing my thunder. I was about to say, I would start Dawson on the wing because that just puts him in a situation where he can go wherever he likes, sort of thing. Whereas in the middle, he's got responsibilities. Whereas if they go down, he can actually go back if he needs to. If we get the ball forward, he can set up to be defensive. I just think that would really suit him.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. Wing or half back for mine, with maybe the odd run through a centre bounce, just to break things up. But having him as a midfield mainstay, I think, is not doing his career any good. And he's getting knocked about, and we're putting too many dents in that little Mercedes. So in that Ferrari.
I just want to make one comment. There's somebody called Dagner in the chat says still no mention of Rob being dog shit by these boys. But I think
we spent about 10 minutes on it, so I don't know whether you were somewhere else when when we talked about that, but yeah. Anyway,
yeah, I just want to defend that. I just want to defend ourselves on that point because, mate, we really did give him a serve.
Yeah. All right. Before we get into the rest of the weekend's results, Mac, I'll just do a little bit of housekeeping, so you can have a little breather there. As I mentioned, don't forget that we're brought to you by Once.Sport, sports analytics software. They've been great friends to us over the course of the last few months. If you haven't already, you can get amongst our Discord. The links are in the description. We have great game day chat. We have live chat, as you can see, running through our podcasts, and also 24/7 Crows chat. So it's a really good community. I think we're up about 450 people in the community now there. So by all means, get around that. If you want to follow us on socials, at AFL Crowcast is where to find us. If you want some merch, go to the shop, aflcrowcast.com/shop. And, of course, liking and subscribing really does help us as well. All right, Macca, let's have a look at the rest of the round, shall we?
Yep, I'll keep it quick.
I'll read the scores. You give me a blurb. Collingwood 16-13, 109 beats Sydney 12-6, 78.
Well, no Houston, no DeGoey, no Schultz, no worries. Dacos was outstanding with 34 possessions, and side bottom, he's 34 years old, and he played like a junior. They were just too good for Sydney, and
they found another midfielder too. What was his name again?
Yeah, I've forgotten his name too, but yeah, he did very, very well, and he's only like a. Can't remember, mate, but I know that it happened. But they had too much strength overall, and that's 4 wins in a row for the Pies. Ned Long, yeah, had a good game.
Yeah, so they've come back up quite well. North 13-11, 89, gallant for 2.5 quarters, but the Suns overpower them in the end, 21-15, 141 in picturesque Lindok.
Now I've got to say this, mate. Suns were wearing the worst ever Guernsey worn in the AFC, in the AFL, sorry. The pink Guernsey. Did you watch it?
It's not the worst. Not the worst.
It was horrible. Horrible.
It wasn't great, but it wasn't the worst.
Yeah. Anyhow, and look, the Suns, they showed they were a good side. I mean, they were just, in the end, just too good. They just ran away and with an 8-goal something win. And, yeah, they'll be playing finals. No doubt about that.
I really enjoyed some of Dermy's insight in that game. He was very good at pointing out where North deficiencies lie, and it's all about work rate, defensive work rate. So it'll be interesting to see whether Clarkson can turn that around, because they've got plenty of talent, North Melbourne. We saw that when we played them. But we also got them on work rate as well. We were able to turn them around quite consistently. So if they can sort that out, I think they'll a bit of a jump. Carlton finally got on the board, 17-19, 121 to the Eagles, 6-14, 50.
Not much to talk about here, really. But I mean, the Blues are absolutely hopeless, and yet they thrash West Coast. So what does that make West Coast? Absolutely hopeless. I think they're in for a horrible season, aren't they?
They've had a horrible last 3 seasons, for God's sake. How much longer can it go?
Well, as I said, the Blues are
cooked.
Yeah, the Blues were horrible for 4 games, and they thrashed West Coast. So,
well, the problem for West Coast, of course, is that they're going to start losing talent, because why would you stick around? You have blokes like Oscar Allen and that Harley Reid and Tom Barrass has already nicked off, and you'll get others too that aren't going to stick around because they want success. And if they don't have any faith in the program, then they're not going to stick around, and that then becomes a bit of a perpetual cycle. Who would have thought West Coast would have found themselves in such a position?
It's incredible. They've just been going, instead of having a bad year and going upwards. Well, yeah, as somebody said, they haven't even reached rock bottom yet.
Yeah. The Western Bulldogs put up a fight, but ultimately went down to the Lions, 14-13, 97 to 18-10, 118. Pretty good comeback from the Lions.
It really was, because at halftime I thought that it was a 33-point lead, I think, off memory, and
Something like that.
I thought this is going to be the upset of the round, but like a good team does, the players lifted and their work rate. Their work rate went up, and they just wore them down, and they bear in mind the Bulldogs have got some very good players out. When you've got Bontempelli, for example.
I don't think the Bulldogs were disgraced at all.
No, not by a long way.
And then we had, talk about clubs in trouble. Melbourne 8-9-57. Imagine having all that talent and not being able to beat Essendon 15-6-96.
That's exactly what I've got written down here. And you've got a ruckman like Gore. You've got two really, really classy midfielders. I mean, Oliver's more of a workhorse, but they've got good midfields. Yet they don't seem to have much else at all.
I tell you what, though, Mac, I got to say, and I'm a bit of a fan of this guy, but Sam Draper beat Max Gawn.
That's my next line. That's my very next line, mate. But Sam Draper I always thought he was an average type of ruckman, but I watched him very closely. He did a very good job against Gawn.
Told you,
a really good job.
I told you, he's underrated. He's underrated.
Very much underrated, and he's what I really did like was his work around the ground, and also around the goals. I mean, I know he's out of contract, and I'm pretty sure we are having a crack at him, and I would love to land him, because I'll tell you what,
you're on board. Now you're on board. Righto. Only took you 5 games.
Well, I'm 100% on board, mate. 100% on board. No, I've watched Draper week by week, but he's been playing at full forward, but they unleashed him into the ruck. Rabbit says he still doesn't want him. Look, on what he played in this particular game, if that's what he's going to produce, I would love to have him in our side.
I think he gives you a point of difference. I think he gives you a bit more effort around the ground. And I think him and Thilthorpe would be a good 1-2 punch, I reckon. Yep,
totally agree.
Because you could very easily swap them up forward, because Draper will give you a goal. He'll give you a contest. So,
yep.
Yeah. No, I know he's a Port no longer South boy, and he's got the mullet and all the rest of it and all that, but I would very happily have him at Adelaide. I think he'd be a good answer to our rucking problems. The Dockers did what they had to do against Richmond, 16-12, 108 to 7-5-47.
Yeah, you summed that up. That'll do.
The Giants and the Saints was a good game. The Giants are too strong, though, 16-14 to St Kilda, 12-10.
Yeah, the thing that really stuck out to me, I thought that St Kilda had seen the Suns' horrible Guernsey and think we can put one out that's pretty horrible too. Terrible Guernsey.
Mate, the worst Guernsey that's ever been pulled out, worse than the Suns, worse than St Kilda, is anything that Hawthorn wears.
Yeah, it's hard to beat.
Because you can't make piss and shit look good on the same bloody Guernsey.
Yeah. Okay. No argument there. The GWS have got class. Too much class.
Yeah, we'll talk about them as we finish up in a sec. And the last game, I put the halftime score there up. That's where I was at when I was getting prepared. But the end score was 18-13, 1-2-1 to 14-7, 91. Hawthorn did come back a little bit after a terrible first half. Imagine kicking 3 goals against Port and a half. They ended up kicking 11 goals to 6 in the second half, so there's a bit more like Hawthorn, but the damage was done by then.
Yes, that's a total shock. And I didn't think Port would they could do that, and I didn't think that Hawthorn would go that bad to let them do it. So, but there you go.
One of those games for Port, you know how they can pull one out where they've been under the pump, and poor old Kenny's getting a roast, and they don't like Daddy Kenny getting touched up in the media, so they all get their dander up, and uncle, the nephew Jason will come up, and the cousin, freaking what's his name, Butters will come up, and that'll only last a week.
Yeah, you're probably right. Just coming back on the Melbourne game, I think Goodwin's in trouble, don't you reckon?
Well, he must be. I mean, I think that whole club's in a bit of disarray, Macca, to be honest with you. Petrarca obviously doesn't want to be there. We know all about Oliver. There's issues with drug use behind the scenes, and they've got a stand-in chairman. No one wants to stand up and lead that club. The bloke that makes me chuckle is bloody Gary Lyon with his cushy media career. Sits here and pots his old club all the time on whatever platform he can find. And I feel like saying, Gary, you've made enough money in the media. Why don't you go back and help your club and actually get involved?
I can guarantee that won't happen, Fane.
Oh, no, I know. Because he would not want to set himself up to be a failure, Gary Lyon. But to me, it's just piss weak.
Yeah. Look, you're 100% right. The only thing is that we can say that till cows come home, and he just won't do it.
I mean, at the end, I don't care. But it's amazing how few, Jimmy Steins was everything for that. It took a bloody Irishman coming from another country to be the stalwart of that club. Where's all the other past players that used to be there? You got the only one is I always forget his name. There's one bloke there who's involved, but where the club, that such an old club. Where's all the people coming in to rally around them? They're bloody useless.
But they're not. They're not.
Brad Green, thanks, Tibble.
I just think that if they don't start winning games, and they don't look like it at the moment, if they don't, I reckon I reckon 2 more losses and Goody's gone. That's how I read it.
I think you'd probably stick with Goody if there wasn't the cultural issues going on in the back, because there's probably elements of him, possibly having an impact there. If it was purely on coaching, Mac, I don't know, because there's not unless you could jag someone like a Longmire or a Buckley or someone like that. What's the point?
Yeah, well, look, it depends where do you allocate the blame? And in there, I think it always, and I know that Petrarca's got a part in it, Oliver's got a part in it, other players have. There's a lot of players like, what's his name, Van Rooyen, is it?
Yeah.
He was. He looked like being a star, coming up star, but he's can't even mark a ball now. So they've got so many players out of form, and there's something very, very wrong inside the club at the moment. Something very wrong, and usually the coach is the one that cops it in the neck. Maybe it's not what they might.
Well, as I think Rabbit's in the chat, it'll probably end up being a case of it's either Goodwin or it's Petrarca and possibly Oliver. They won't get to keep both.
Yeah.
Anyway, who cares about Melbourne? All right. So looking at the ladder, and we have Brisbane on top. The Suns also undefeated, but second because of their 1-match deficit. Giants, Collingwood, Hawthorn also on 16 points. Geelong, Adelaide and Fremantle on 12 in the 8, so we're now down to 7th, and with a bit of a sinker. And then we have St Kilda out of the 8 also on 12 points, and then Sydney on 8, along with Port, Western Bulldogs, Essendon, and then on 4 points we have Carlton, North and Richmond, and Melbourne and West Coast yet to open their account. All right, Mac. not too much left to do. We've kept it reasonably in good time for a change.
Yeah, not
probably because those other two
not
loudmouths aren't here. But let's just quickly talk about the GWS game before we go. Now, when is that? That's next Sunday, I think. Let me have a look. Let me have a look at the fixture. Next Saturday at 3:45 at Adelaide Oval. Absolutely no reason why we can't win this game.
I agree. I think that the one thing is that one advantage of it's a Saturday game, isn't it?
Yes, Saturday afternoon, 3:45.
So we've got a 9. This time we've got a 9-day break.
We got plenty of break.
Yeah. So we should have plenty of legs, and I'm not saying that GWS won't have legs either. But what I'm saying is that in the game against Geelong, Geelong, they had a little bit of an advantage over us there, and that won't exist. And we've had some very, very close games with GWS at Adelaide Oval, and I can remember we've lost one or two of them, and I think we won a couple as well. So I think that I just remember what somebody put up on the thing. No, I believe we can win this game. You and I were both. We were negative about the game that we did lose against Geelong, and the reasons that we predicted it. So I've got to say we were right there, sadly. But also I think we're both in agreement. I think that we've got the opportunity. We've got the really bad one out of our way, and we've got a 9-day rest, and there's no reason why we should make one or two changes. And we've got, in my opinion, we've got every opportunity to win the game. If we don't win the game, and I'm not underestimating GWS by any means, but if we don't win the game, then we've really got to look at Nixon, what he's doing and how he's structuring up, and et cetera, because I think it is an opportunity to win.
Certainly an opportunity to win, and if the pre-season stated goals of making finals are real, then this is a game we should win. We should beat GWS at home off a 9-day break. I don't know whether the Giants are flying home and coming back, but obviously their preparation is going to be a little bit disrupted on a 6-day break with a flight in and a flight out. Even if they're going to stay here, it's not going to be ideal. So everything's in our favour. The boys have got enough time to recover from knocks. Get their energy levels back up, etc., etc. They should be hurting after losing to Geelong, giving up a 30-point lead. They should be hurting, dropping down the ladder to, almost being out of the 8 again. And the Giants are a team that if we're making the finals, they will be up against the Giants. So I'm predicting that we'll lose and lose heavily.
Are you?
Yes.
No, I'm going. Well, I'll stick my neck out.
Well, I heard what you said. I just gave you what I said. I think that I actually think that we Nix has come into the season with a nice, pretty little kick transition style, which is lovely around the traffic cones. And he's got the 3-headed monster up forward, which is great until the opposition see the selected team and go, right, what are we going to do about that? And I think GWS actually match up quite well on us defensively. They've got Taylor and the other lad down there. So I don't think that they'll have many concerns of us defensively. I think they're a far harder working midfield than we are, particularly if we continue to go to well on the blokes that we talked about earlier in the podcast. So I think they'll shut us down. And quite frankly, I think Chris Scott showed the competition the blueprint.
Yeah, well, and sadly he did. He did. I have to agree with that. But look, if we are going to be put this way, what I'm really saying, Pete, is that if we are going to have any delusions of grandeur about making finals, then we have to win this game.
Oh, 100%.
And if we
100%.
And to me that was. I haven't lost the faith yet. I certainly have a lot of mistrust with the coach. But having said that, with the players, if they pick the right balanced team, I think that they can do it. Well, that is a danger. I can't control the selection, and if there's, they really do have to pick the right people, and they've got them there to pick. And I'm not underestimating GWS. They're a very good team, but I still think if you're going to go play finals and you're playing in your home ground, you've got to win that game.
Of course, you're not getting any argument from me there. That's exactly what I said. If we're going to be a contender, this is the game. This is the sort of game that we have to win. We need to beat a fellow contender on our home deck. Just the same as when the Suns rock up later in the year, we need to beat them on our home deck. That's what you do.
Yep.
We won't. We won't beat GWS this week.
Well, look, I haven't totally lost the faith yet, Theme. If we do lose to GWS, and then I might start losing it. But at this stage, I haven't lost the faith. I can still see good players in our team, and I just hope that with the 9-day rest, and that they should be really running on top of the ground, and it'll just show whether we are good enough to be a finalist or not.
It very much will, Mac. And look, I certainly hope that we bounce back and win, and I'd certainly want us to be successful, etc., etc. And there are times where there's false dawns, and the first couple of weeks certainly gave us a nice little kickstarter for the season, and we looked good and we looked sharp, and three-headed monster was working and all that sort of stuff. And you do get ahead of yourself a bit, and the form line is difficult to draw. Certainly St Kilda are going okay, but they were very undermanned when we played them. So you do sort of get up and about a bit, but when you start looking at things logically and rationally and see some of the decisions that are just made over and over and over and over again.
Well,
sadly, I'm back to where I was with regards to not the playing list. I've got a lot of faith in the playing list. I just wish that they would get opportunities, but I just don't think we're getting anywhere until we roll over our coaching staff. And hopefully, Murray Davis is compiling a nice little mid-season report to the board, and hopefully, Barmy's having a bit of a look from afar and maybe making a couple of calls. Thanks, Rabbit. Well, and because I don't want to, I don't have the stamina for another Nick's coaching extension. I don't have the stamina, Mac. If we get into a Ken Hinkley cycle at the Crows, I'm out. I've got to pull up stops at that point.
Well, look, I do understand where you're coming from, because he has had a lot of chances. I mean, he's had what year is this? Oh, I've lost track. He seems to be there for bloody ever.
Fifth season.
Well, if we don't make the finals, he has to go. He really does have to go. If we don't make the finals, he must go. I mean, 2 years ago, we should have been in the finals. We should be really talking about top four. I mean, if you were good enough 2 years ago to be in the 8, which we were, and we've brought in other good players in the meantime, we should be a shoo-in to be in the finals, and we should be in the top 4. Would you agree with that?
Well, I mean, yes and no. That 2023 season, Macca, was built around youth, and people need to remember after the bye in that season, we stumbled hard, and we stumbled on the back of picking Matt Crouch and Rory Sloane over and over and over again, and maintaining the Matt Crouch, Rory Laird, Rory Sloane midfield, right? And we stumbled in the back half of that season. And yes, we had an opportunity, and we should have made the finals given the goal umpiring error. But that season was built around blokes like Joshua Shelley at the beginning of the season, and these blokes getting us over the line and then getting discarded. And since then, they haven't had a look in. You know, they've been unfortunate. Sam Berry's had injuries. Harry Schoenberg's had injuries. Luke Pedler's had injuries and weird form fluctuations and whatnot. I get it. But the simple fact is that 2023 season was a bit of a false dawn, and it was the blokes that would have been playing finals were not the blokes who actually got us into the position to make finals, is what I'm saying, that year.
Well, your argument's good and it's solid, and I'm not arguing with that what you've said. But having said that, a club should grow each year. It really should grow each year. And
I guess that's my point, Macca. That the team that we trotted out in the second half of the season is the one that we've trotted out ever since then.
I mean, we've added 3 new players in this year, and they are all of good quality.
Right.
I think I think the team that we've got and the firepower we do have up forward is good enough to make finals, and it should make finals. I'm not saying it's a premiership team.
So you're saying that the addition of talent, not the growth of the coach, the addition of talent is what might make us fall into the 8?
Yeah, I'm saying in spite of Nitz that we should make the 8.
Exactly.
In spite of him.
It's exactly my point. It's exactly my point, Macca. We've now got enough talent to be able to sneak in. We're a top 8 side, right? Based on talent alone, we're a top 8 side. But what's the point?
Exactly.
Because we're still doing the same things we were doing 2-3 years ago when we didn't have the talent. We'd start playing the same game plan. Nick still can't come up with a balance between offense and defense. We're still playing blokes that we should have moved on 2 or 3 years ago. This is my point. You just made my point for me.
Well, I'm actually not denying your point either, by the way. I'm not denying it. I'm just saying I'm 100% supporting your point. But what I'm saying is that if we should be able to, I reckon we've got enough talent, we should be able to get past him in a sense, in spite of him, to make the 8. And if we don't, then he must go.
We may make the 8. I don't see any point in making the 8.
No, but it's a little bit depressing always being, your season always ends at the end of August.
Not if it provides impetus to change. If you were to, I'll give you I'll give you 2 options, Mac. If you were to replace Matthew Nick, who would your 2 choices be? One an established coach that's available, and one who would be an assistant from another club.
Well, I really would like an established coach, I think.
So who would you target?
Well, I hadn't really put my mind to it, so
Brenton Sanderson.
No, I hadn't. I saw that. You wonder about Nathan Buckley, whether he would be the type of man, but I really want somebody that's I mean, I just don't know, because they can come from anywhere, and then the coach of Brisbane, Fagan, proves that. It's just the right guy with a very good people manager, and he really has got a lot of football knowledge. And
Chris Fagan wasn't an unknown quantity. He didn't come from nowhere at all. He'd been in the system for 20 years at different clubs, and he was highly respected.
But not really a coach, though, Frank.
Well, he had coached before, as he'd been an assistant at 2 clubs before he went into administration.
Yeah, well, I don't really. I can't, rattle off a name, but that's their job. They should know who's who. And
yeah, but your job is on this podcast is to provide an opinion, so don't crutch on that, Macca.
Ask me next week, and I'll give you a name.
Oh, okay. Well, I reckon of all the established coaches, I think Nathan Buckley is the one for me. It's always been the one for me. But an interesting thought popped in my head over the weekend. If you're going to go for an assistant, then you want an assistant that comes from a system that knows how to beat us. Because if you get an assistant from that club, so I would be, and I think the perfect person would be James Raleigh. He's been at our club. He knows how it works.
Yeah.
And he knows how to beat
us. He won't come though. He is a Geelong man, and that's the reason he went back, because he's a Geelong man. He didn't leave us because he's dissatisfied. He just wanted to go home to where he belongs.
I understand that, but if you offer him a senior coaching role, if he's up for a senior coaching role, then he'd go wherever the job is. Surely, there's only one job in Geelong.
Yes. Yep. Look, I can't say for sure whether I must admit, James Riley was very, very clever with our forward line. No doubt about that. I think he's very, very clever with Geelong's forward line as well. But Buckley, Buckley's the only one I can think of just off the top of my head.
No, you didn't think of him. I thought of him. Your answer is completely insipid. Insipid, Macca. Insipid.
I said, mate. I said I can only think of Buckley.
You said ask me next week. Ask me next week. Anyway, let's not crap on about this any longer. I think we got until the bye to work out whether Nix is going to get an extension or not. If we drop a couple more, if we're behind the ledger at the bye, I reckon he's in real trouble, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I hope they've got the balls to get rid of him, because I'm tired of us not improving. I'm tired of us not getting there.
Look, I think John Olsen is too, and I think having gotten us over the line at Theberton, I think the appointment of Davis and the recruitment of Baum is an indicator that John Olsen has turned his attention to footy operations, having got us over the line. And
100%.
Yeah, and I don't think that John is one to mince words or play favourites or whatever, as someone just does a burnout next to my house. And I think he now wants club success. So I reckon, and I would think he's probably seen that there are a few good coaches around the place, Longmire, Buckley, Simpson, those sort of blokes. So there's blokes that are gettable. There's also assistants around that are probably ready to go, and I've said Raleigh, there's probably 2 or 3 others. I think this is a very important time for Matthew Nix's coaching career, and I reckon John Olsen's got his magnifying glass out.
No, you're right. I reckon 100%, no doubt. You can lock it in. That's right, because Baum into the board, and what's his name? Murray Davis. And they do call him the head of coaching, and so in a way, he's like superior to Nix in a way.
Yeah.
So you don't bring those people in for nothing, and so they've been brought in with the concerns with the coach. There's no doubt about that. So
Yeah.
yeah. In a way,
ostensibly to support him, but ultimately to not critique him, but to certainly to provide the board an overview of what's going on. A lot of people in the chat saying that Rashudo wants Goodwin to come back. I couldn't see the board approving Goodwin, to be honest with you, irrespective of Rashudo, because Rashudo would have to abstain from that vote. I don't see that getting up. I don't see Goodwin back at our club.
I don't want him either. No, he's tainted.
Yeah, I don't see it getting up. We've got some people We've got some people on the board that would know a lot about what's going on behind the scenes at Melbourne, and I think that would preclude them from voting for Goody.
Yeah, we've got two levels running at the same time. There's us all wanting us to improve, but on the other hand, if we're going down, we get rid of Nick. So, this has to be last year.
The camp that it won't be if we make the 8, and this is the point. This is the problem. This is the problem, Mac, and this is why, unfortunately, I'm in the camp that says I either want us to succeed and for Matthew Nicks to grow as a coach and for our coaching group to be to grow as a coaching group and to become more dynamic and all the rest of it, and if they can all work together and get to the promised land, that's great. But if they're going to continue to throw up things like selecting Lockie Murphy and just entering into a game like an important game against Geelong with no plan whatsoever, then I would rather we miss the finals again. And that's not me being a shit supporter. That's me wanting the best for the club, because I think the only way that Matthew Nicks gets turned over is if we don't make the finals again. So he either improves as a coach and the coaching group improves as a coaching group, we become more dynamic, we become a more rounded team, and he gets us into the top 8, the top 4, and on the way to a flag. Fantastic. Everyone's a winner, and I'll be the first to say, Matthew Nicks, you really improved as a coach, and well done. But as I said in my video at the beginning of the year about whether he was the Messiah, history is totally against him. He would have to pull off something. He would have to pull off something that no other coach in modern AFL history has done to be able to get this team from where it was to where we want it to be. And I don't see it. I just don't see it, mate.
No, and if I'm 100% honest, I don't think he's got the ability to do it. I don't think he has got the ability to do it. If we are successful, it'll be in spite of him, not because of him. That's the way I see it.
Anyway, look, mate, we dragged that one out to the 2-hour mark, and apologies for the people listening who might think we're just being negative, considering we've started with a 3-2, but we've been down this road before, haven't we, Mac?
Many a time, mate. Many a time. But you do get tired of watching the same type of mistakes being made week after week, year after year. So
you do.
That's why we talk. That's why we mention it.
But we're going to wind it up now, mate. Thanks to everyone who joined us on Discord and on YouTube, of course. Look out for the content during the week. It should be quite interesting this week, given the results. And now, Saturday game, so that's good. Will be normal time on the podcast next Sunday night. And we'll have a full deck of... and I reckon next week, Macca, you and I are just going to sit back and Brownie and Big Man can do the show, because we've been bloody carrying them for the last 3 weeks.
Well, we've got humped back, haven't we, out of it?
Yeah.
We had to carry their bloody weight.
Yeah. But, so we'll just sit back. We might even put ourselves on mute, I reckon.
Big Man sitting there barracking for bloody port.
I know. It's rude.
And Brownie checking out the alleged chicks in Thailand.
Mate, he's been in Phuket the last week. I don't even want to talk about what he's been doing.
Well, he probably doesn't want to talk about it either.
Correct. And on that note, we might let it go. So thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you again next week for another edition of the Weekend Wrap. Good night, everyone.
Yep. Good night, all.